Guys, what's up? This is McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, always Coleman McAllister, joined by me, myself, and I for another Super Solo episode today. Here in the regular studio room because, oh my God, doing out in that hallway, it is a war when you got cats around in the early. I try to do these in the early mornings and it just doesn't work with the system I have in place out there. So it's a new change of pace here. So irrelevant details, things that don't matter. Little inside tidbits. That's how we like to start the podcast out. No, I wanted to talk today about a few different things that have been going on in kind of the media sphere and all that. Things that I'm surprised have not, I should say by the corporate press, I'm not surprised at all that this has been completely ignored and overlooked. Not at all shocking, but, for, some of the, I would say more underground news sources or like people who are more in like the non-corporate conservative geist, right? Nobody has really been talking about this, and it's surprising. Something that like I had caught my attention years ago, when hearing about James O'Keefe talk about this, who was the man who founded Project Veritas. For those who don't know, I don't really know what the state of that organization is anymore. I know he was kind of outed out in a sense from his own organization, James O'Keefe. So I assume maybe it's not on the greatest, terms as of now, but there was a period where they were putting out a lot of really interesting content, especially around COVID. Just different, basically they would just corner people who were in media or politics or whatever, kind of just in public in the middle of the street, just corner them. Or I remember there was a big thing where they had a woman pose as a hooker for a congressman or something, and he spilled out a bunch of details. I think things happened that were, I think it was things that were happening with Twitter and kind of, the collusion between them and the federal government. So anyways, they had this Ashley Biden diary, the diary of Ashley Biden, which was apparently stolen from her by a friend while helping her move. And I think the people who did steal the diary have done jail time in some sense. I don't really know how much. Didn't really seem like a whole lot, but so I guess there's that at least. And I want to say this off the bat. This is not like this woman, Ashley Biden. And I actually did go through and read a majority of this diary, probably about 75% of it, about 90 pages worth of content. And this starts, I think, in early or mid 2019, maybe the end of 2018, and really goes through the beginnings of, not like the events in her diary are not depicting this necessarily, but just in the time of her father's election in 2020. So kind of those early years of that, and there's a lot of really interesting things. I think as a whole, a very tragic story about someone who clearly has some severe issues that, in my opinion, probably stem from abuse from her father or other people that were in her life who just took advantage of her. There's several instances where she describes wondering if maybe she was molested, maybe being potentially raped, but not remembering. So clearly this is someone who's very damaged, and at time, as someone who, is, a recovering sex and porn addict. And I was never molested as a child, right? Like I never have had anything like that happen to me. But understanding, what the mental strife of cause she has multiple different excursions with several different partners, despite being married. She talks about 3 or 4 different men that she's seeing at a time, throughout this whole thing. And again, this is not even me degrading her. This is, this is the behavior of someone who clearly has issues, who went through something as a child. And, I'm about to read you some parts of this where it's clear that there was something going on with her father, right? Joe Biden, the president of the United States, the person who is running for re-election this coming year, right? Who half the country voted for, and who potentially half the country is going to vote for again. And who may once again serve another 4 years. I guess my point with all this is not to necessarily throw Ashley Biden under the microscope. I want to focus on and we're going to talk about Tara Reade also in a little bit. Focus on the damage that Joe Biden has done to these women, to potentially other women that we don't even know about, right? Other children we may not know about. We don't know. That's the problem with a lot of this. I in the upcoming episode with Sean Pryor, I said, 2024 seems to be like the year of the pedo. And that's not like me celebrating pedophilia like at all. It's like, I think it's a very positive thing that like these things are being revealed and being talked about. But I think it's something that a lot of people just do not acknowledge. They're not willing to talk about this subject. It makes them uncomfortable. Even the word itself, pedophile, which is something that we should say in society. We shouldn't just ignore that word, act like it doesn't happen. This is a real thing that happens, and it's awful. And these people need to be, in my opinion, need to be put down like an animal. I mean, that's to do something like this to a child. I mean, you're an animal. You're not a human being at that point. You're no longer, in my mind, that you don't have any of the politeness that we give to other people, the respect that we give to other people. You're beyond that at that point. You're an animal. You're a fucking animal at that point. Anyways, let's get to the good, not even the good stuff. Some of the things in this diary that I just found very disturbing. This is an excerpt from January 30th of 2019. I remember pulling up my skirt in second grade and showing the boys my underpants. Hypersexualized at a young age. What is this due to? Was I molested? I think so. I can't remember specifics, but I do remember trauma. I remember not liking the Wolzak's house. I remember somewhat being sexualized with Caroline. I remember having sex with friends at a young age. Showers with my dad, probably, quote in parentheses, probably not appropriate. Being turned on when I wasn't supposed to be. I remember the Q-tips. I hated getting my ears clean. Beating my vagina due to overhearing parents having sex. What made me so attached? And these are bullet points. My mother not emotionally available. My father was, message, I couldn't get love from men, in underline. Quotes, I am not your mother. Blanket beat and take it away. Not letting myself go to the bathroom. Being wiped until too late. I don't know what that means. Being wiped until too late in the game. I could list all the reasons, but I can't seem to find the solution. And that's how that ends. And again, I forgot to mention this before. Yes, of course it's possible that this could be a fake. However, Ashley Biden herself has come out and said that this is hers. That's embarrassing. That's hers. So it's pretty hard at that point when it's claimed by the person who supposedly wrote it. It's kind of hard to argue that, right? So, anyways, maybe she misremembered this. That's possible. But however, the evidence for this is just too concrete. I mean. And we're going to go through a couple more examples that I found while reading this, but having sex with your child, or not having, probably having sex, but like having showers with your child just is not, I mean, even if he didn't necessarily have sex, I mean, this is the problem, is like when we find these behaviors in people who are, in media or politics or whatever, right? Like people just find like we'll find the ways to justify this, or to like just ignore the probability that there's beyond the evidence that we have, right? There's probably more activity that's happening. Someone who's willing to have showers with their daughter at a young age when it's how she recounts as being inappropriate. That's not okay. Again, not someone who should be a member of society, let alone president of the United States. Also, there were just kind of other parts just with their dad, minor details. There was a whole list of people in her life, and she described her father as the resentment that she had towards her father was due to money and control. Also another theme of an abuser, right? Like, and this is a whole thing that's kind of throughout her diary, is like she has resentment for her parents, but then she also, kind of depends on them and has love for them. Something when you're in like a deep political family, right, and there's a lot of money involved, it's so easy for that to be just like a negative festering relationship, right? Having my own family connections of people that are kind of in the were involved in a political sphere, or still are involved in a political sphere in a sense, not to this proportions, but even on a surface level, I can understand like the like she said, like in the list, like money and the control. And then it's interesting that she resents the mother for just the dad, which that kind of could allude something to, right? Like maybe there's something that was inappropriate that her mother just didn't really do anything about. Okay, and then this was later on. This was her. She was going, besides being a sex addict, she's clearly hooked on, I think, cocaine, maybe other harder drugs. I don't know. This she was describing kind of just like going through all these urges, reaching out to family, etc. My dad talked, I can't recognize that. My dad talked on the phone saying that he has the debate in a week and quote unquote now has to worry about you. Just very like flippant and very just shitty. That was more just like a revealing of his character, right? Like this man who potentially abused his child. The child who is now having problems with drugs and all this, like probably due to him, right? Like now he's just saying like fuck you, basically. Again, just not good behavior. And then this is just a list where she kind of lists out her trauma. And under the list of trauma is, or the bullet points that are under the category of trauma. Are bullying, dad younger, health. That's very vague, but you could infer something from that. Rape and sexual encounters is on there as well as verbal abuse. So just there's a lot of different things, right? And I kind of just wanted to. I know that might have been long going through all that, but like I really wanted to list that all out because even like the people who I would expect would be completely on this, like be like, harking, and maybe there's something I'm missing, right? Like maybe there's some glaring thing that I'm making an ass out of myself once again, and maybe this information isn't correct for some reason. If that's the case, let me know in the comments, right? But there's something about this that I had always suspected that this was legitimate. We didn't have the evidence. We now have the evidence years later. We're in an election cycle. And I don't think, similarly to what happened during COVID, I don't think it's a surprise that this is happening right around the time that Biden's announcing that he's going to change the schedule of marijuana by 2 schedules. Not even to the bottom of the schedule part. I mean, he's taking it from the top to the middle. Like, okay, but it's I don't know if this makes you feel like a crazy person, right? But there are things that just seem to happen right around the time that other things are revealed. If you're looking at things from a more whole perspective, where you're kind of looking at all these different avenues and angles, right? It just seems too perfect. It's like too perfect to be like this is just a coincidence. Like it's like during COVID, right? When the Roe v. Wade stuff was announced that was potentially going to get struck down, happened the same day that I think it was, what was the company? Pfizer's. When Pfizer's annual reports came out, revealing a lot of infant deaths. The same thing happened, where a bombshell of information dropped, and then something happens in the government right after that sends people into a, it taps into people's morality and sends them in a place where they're like, oh, I'm either really supportive of this is awesome, or this is awful, we need to do something about this. Because emotion trumps logic every time. That's why we have a government. That's why we have people who just do what they do, right? They're able to just live with emotion, live and die with emotion. Like the logic doesn't matter. As long as you can appeal to people's hearts, as long as you can appeal to people's guts, they will rationalize in their head voting for a pedophile. Okay, so enough on poor Ashley. I thought we would go into someone who I maybe feel a little less bad talking about. Someone who's been very public, Tara Reade. This is another thing that we have been seeing for a couple years. Her accusing Joe Biden of sexually assaulting her in, I believe, 1993. And really nothing being done about it. Minimal coverage from the corporate press, obviously not surprising. And this was something that I had heard about but never really researched on. And the clip that we're going to play is an interview with her from the man who I berated so hard last time, Tucker Carlson. Like I said, I as much as I don't like him on a lot of things, I will always give him the credit. He always seems to be at the helm of when these, contrary opinion type of information, right? You know what I mean? This is what we do here. When this kind of stuff happens, he always seems to be at the forefront of it. And I thought I highly recommend checking it. We'll play a little clip here kind of describing the whole thing that's going on with her right now. But I highly recommend checking out the whole interview. It's only 25 minutes. Tucker Carlson's conversation with Tara Reade. All right, here's the clip.
Came to Moscow.
So you make this allegation against the president of the United States, then a candidate, a credible allegation. Once again, I wouldn't be talking to you if I didn't think it was credible. I think it is credible. I think it's true. And they don't even respond. They just accuse you of being a traitor to your country.
Immediately. That was the first response, not even a denial at first. So I thought that was interesting.
And the media amplify those.
Oh, yes. New York Times amplified it. Washington Post did. Everyone did. Politico, they did their.
And I will say, I don't really remember this happening, so she could be over fluffing that, but
their due diligence for the empire, I guess. I didn't really understand the media at that time. Now you have to understand, I'm a regular citizen. I don't have a PR team. I don't have lawyers. Now I have a lawyer, but then I didn't have resources.
Where were you living?
I was living in California, and I was really naive about the media, and now I understand. I think a lot of people in 2019, 2020 were still a little naive.
Just to be clear, it sounds like you've been a fairly liberal Democrat your whole life.
I was. I really had, really believed. I worked for Leon Panetta as an intern. I worked for Joe Biden. I worked as a Democratic operative on congressional campaigns. I was trained by Homeland Security. I was trained by Seattle Police to help with domestic violence. I was a train the trainer. I donated my time. I worked for Democrats. I believed in it wholeheartedly. And so it's been heartbreaking when I came forward with evidence how I was treated, how I still am treated. Like to this day, I get called right now a defector, a traitor. I did back then before I left the U.S.
I keep stepping on your story, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's just a remarkable story when you lay it out and give the timeline. It's amazing what's happened to you. So just back to where you were before I interrupted you. So you're here on vacation to get a translation of your book done.
Yes.
And you do an interview with local TV, and then you start getting messages from informed people who you trust. Tara, you're in danger of being indicted. And what happens then?
Well, I would be put into a cage because with the FAR Act, it's a backdoor into the Espionage Act, essentially. It's the Federal Registration Act. So you have to register as a foreign agent registration Act. Yeah. It's administrative. They never used to even use it, but now they're using it as a backdoor into espionage. So you might recall the Uhuru Group, right?
Very well.
The
black nationalists that we defended.
Right.
Okay, anyways. Yeah. So, so clearly they're using, that might not even have been the best clip, I apologize. Describing what, exactly what happened. What happened with her. But in that clip, you could see that there's a clear, the government, Joe Biden, or the people who are controlling Joe Biden, run Joe Biden, right? They're using the law, the legal system to intentionally target someone who has been sexually assaulted by the president, who hasn't even gotten a light of day, who hasn't even really had a chance in court to as far as I understand, I don't believe she's really gotten a proper chance to really do something about this, right? They haven't even really, like she said, they didn't even really deny it. They basically just laid the law down on her. And look, here's the thing. I think if people are going to just kind of go along with the Biden DNC camp and just go along with this without acknowledging this, it's going to be very hard for me to reconcile that with people I know personally. I don't know how in this day. I understand not getting the information. I can understand that. But when you have the information and you choose to ignore it, that's something that I just cannot wrap my head around. That I cannot grapple with morally. It's very difficult. And look, I wanted to say this too. I wanted to bring this up. I do not think that Joe Biden is the only person who has been in the White House over the last decade who has been involved in this, right? Let's look at Donald Trump. And this is I've got one side of the aisle probably rooting me on right now, and one side of the aisle, but they're about to get shit on. No, I don't know. So this was a lawsuit that was brought against Trump. I will say, amongst a array of I think it was close to 90 lawsuits that were claiming sexual assault from Donald Trump. It's very possible that a significant amount of those may have been fake, may have been a way to exclude him from the presidency or the election or whatever. In the day and age of Trump derangement, it's not surprising, right? However, I think people in this camp really gloss over this, right? Because they're loving Christian, strong leader Donald Trump could never possibly have anything to do with children, right? He could never. The man who's friends with Jeff Epstein could have never done that. They will always gloss over this point, right? Both sides will gloss over these points, and it's extremely infuriating. It's why I'm choosing not to vote this year, because just signing yourself into it with ignoring these details is it's abhorrent in my mind. I can't grapple with that. I cannot grapple with the morality of that. But here's an article from Vox, and and I will say the information on this, it does come from quote unquote the corporate press, so it's always worth being skeptical of. But I do think that there are times where it does provide information, right? This is not unlike something that I would expect out of Donald Trump. This is very in line with billionaire behavior, especially someone who's aligned with Jeff Epstein. Okay. Johnson claimed that Trump violently raped her when she was 13 at a 1994 orgy hosted by Jeffrey Epstein. The billionaire, who was convicted in 2008 of soliciting an underage girl for prostitution and has been accused of having sex with more than 30 underage girls. Johnson's lawsuit mentioned Trump's friendship with Epstein as a comment Trump made in 2002 about the respective tastes in women. I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. The lawsuit alleged a number of charges against both Trump and Epstein, including rape, sexual abuse, assault, and battery, and false imprisonment. Johnson said that when she was 13, Epstein lured her to parties in an apartment by promising money and a modeling career. Johnson said Trump had sexual contact with her at 4 of those parties, including tying her to a bed and violently raping her in a savage sexual assault. The lawsuit said Johnson loudly pleaded with Trump to stop, but that he responded by violently striking plaintiff in the face with his open hand and screaming that he would do whatever he wanted. I mean, again, and look, it's very easy to, point out that could potentially be fake as well, like I said, right? But again, it's just too likely that both the people who are potentially looking at another 4 years, Joe Biden, who's the incumbent, and I think that's right? The incumbent is the one in it. And then Donald Trump. I think it's very possible both these people are pedophiles. Clearly, not even clearly, but there does definitely seem to be more evidence in Biden's camp just by happenstance, right? But look, Trump also has a business empire behind him. He maybe has more, ways to cover that kind of stuff up, right? It's at least worth questioning. And if you're just going to be the person on either side, and look, RFK Jr. was on Epstein's list too, right? He was on the flight list twice, and he's addressed it. He's denied it, and he's said that he hopes that that those people are brought to justice, right? But who knows what he knows, right? All these people probably know shit. They probably all know shit, and they're just not saying it because it's like the Carlin bit. They're all one big club, and you're not in it. And that might sound flippant, that might sound uneducated, but that's just clearly the case to anybody who can see that. So that's my rant on that, I guess. Okay, one more thing about the big king, our leader, our one of our leaders, I should say, or our captives, slave owners, however you want to categorize it. So like I said, as I think in my mind, a distraction to all the Ashley Biden stuff, Biden has taken it upon himself to try to push for marijuana to be dropped from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 3 drug, which is not, to be said, not the lowest schedule. I always thought there was only 3. Apparently there's 5 schedules. I didn't actually recognize any of the drugs that were in Schedule 5, but I mean, the ones that were in Schedule 4, in my mind, were all more, it depends, it varies, right? I hate to say that drugs are worse for you than others, but the negative effects from cannabis are just so low compared to nearly any other drug. You can die faster from water than you can cannabis. That's just a fact. So it's a wild thing to just see that he's just going to be yeah, we're just going to bring it down a couple steps. We're going to make a big tussle. We're going to drop it down from a 1 to a 3. This is the thing that government loves to do. They might as well just rename themselves to Throwing the Bone Co. This is what they do. They're like, okay, we're just gonna give you this bone. We're gonna hold it in front of your ear. Like, hey, look at here. We're gonna do this. And then I guarantee you, this is not gonna happen. This is not going to happen because he's not going to do anything about it right now. He's not going to do anything about this before the election. Then the election's going to happen. Everyone's going to forget about this. And it's not going to matter because he's already doing the 4 years. And then people's lives can continue to get ruined. And this is the thing that fucking pisses me off about this clip that we're about to watch. Is he's like, we need to stop this. We can't let marijuana ruin it. Motherfucker, you were part of the commission. You were part of the bill that further made this such a detrimental thing to people who are involved in this, either on the selling side or the consumption side of this product, of this drug, of cannabis. You're such an influential, instrumental part of it. You've been in government for like decades. And now, while you're a senile old fuck, now you're going to suggest, not that we do the right thing, which is completely legalize it, because there's no reality where it's okay to even have somebody pay a fine for using a substance. This should not even, this is so immoral, so awful. How many people's lives are not even in terms of being jailed, but like fear of society, fear of like a job, right? Fear of like this social construct that has been created by government that then businesses feel like they have to follow, with drug tests, with things like this. Just all these aspects of life that are just ruined by this. And this man has the audacity to just put on this show like, hey, we're gonna hey, nobody should have to suffer from this thing that I did. Fucking retarded. Okay, anyways, let's just play this fucking thing.
This is monumental. Today, my administration took a major step to reclassify marijuana from a Schedule I drug to a Schedule III drug. It's an important move toward reversing long-standing inequities. Today's announcement builds on the work we've already done to pardon a record number of federal offenses for simple possession of marijuana. And it adds to the action we've taken to lift barriers to housing, employment, small business loans, and so much more for tens of thousands of Americans. Look, folks.
Okay, let's go back. What did he say?
Federal offenses for simple possession.
He's simple possession of marijuana. What about all the other people who are in jail for selling it? Like, okay, so it's possessing it's now okay. But the person who just happens to have it and then sell it to other people and then use that money to like, you know, then forth like embark in the free market and help promote other businesses, help people, help their family, help other people like, you know, eat. Yeah, like those people should still be in jail. This is the problem. It's like I said, they're fucking holding a bone in front of you. They're fucking holding a bone. He's not going to do anything. Look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this motherfucker will prove me wrong. Maybe it'll actually happen that it gets descheduled. Does not going to matter. It's not going to matter. Like the state of Iowa is not going to change. Like their shit is not going to change from this getting dropped from a 1 to a 3. It's going to have almost no impact. If that even happens, but it's not even going to fucking happen.
For tens of thousands of Americans. Look, folks, no one should be in jail merely for using or possessing marijuana, period. Far too many lives have been upended because of failed approach to marijuana, and I'm committed to righting those wrongs. You have my word on it.
The wrongs that you created, dude. God, you have to love the government. You have to love the government years later, after the damage has been done from what they do, to just say, you know what? We should change this. My bad. And then never take the blame, like never have any consequences for what they did, ever. Like Joe Biden and his other government cohorts have ruined millions of lives because of what they have done with cannabis. And is awful. And the fact that they're not even going to just write a check and not even write a check, but just fucking check the box that says complete legalization, the right thing to do. You can look, I'm a complete, drug legalization advocate, but I think most people, almost everybody can agree that there's no reason why cannabis specifically should be completely illegal. It's stupid. I mean, the entire logic of drug legalization is just shit on its face value, right? But when you apply it to like cannabis especially, it's just it's literally like saying, like if you were to do that to coffee, if you were to be like, oh hey, you can go to jail for having coffee beans. I always reference Obbs, former guest, I guess, that we've had several times on the podcast. His song "War on Mugs" makes a very correct correlation in my mind between coffee and cannabis. How these drugs really are fairly similar in terms of like their relative effect on the consumer. But, and you know, one is like completely accepted in society. It's at work. There's at most work sites, there's a place where you don't even have to bring your own coffee, or the coffee's there, right? But if you went and smoked a joint out back, you could go to jail and be arrested. It's an insane correlation that we've created in society, where in my mind, when people should have the freedom to choose what they want to consume and put in their bodies, there's no reason why anybody should be able to come in and say you can't do this, you cannot, you can't do this, etc., whatever. So just the hypocrisy in President Biden's approach to this subject is just it's just appalling. It's disgusting. It's something that's not going to happen. I will say that I'm just going to fucking guess that nothing of this is going to happen. And then here's what he's going to do. It's not going to happen. And then they're just the entire establishment is just going to blame the other side when they're all in on the fucking gamut, right? They're all in on the jig. They know what's going on. This is theatrics. This is not a legitimate debate of ideas. This is them continuing to possess the control on their citizens. And with things like cannabis being illegal. And even if this has dropped a few schedules, the significance that's going to have on the population is going to be minimal at best. And it's just not really worth celebrating in my mind. It's like, okay, you gave your slaves cake once a week. Congratulations. They're still slaves. Anyways, okay, one last thing before we wrap this shit up. I gotta put my cards on the table when it's relevant. And this is always a weird this is always a weird area I find myself in when it comes to Kim Reynolds, Governor Kim Reynolds. Because I think I've said a million times, I think she's an authoritarian cunt. I think she's an awful human being. I don't think that she's a suitable governor. She really just reminds me of just a hellish authoritarian. Really, that's kind of how I view her. But look, I think there are times where you have to, even somebody like myself being an anarchist, or, people who are libertarian. I think it's very easy to say every single thing that government does is awful, right? For the sake that they are government. And I think for a lot of things that's true, right? But there are times where government does tend to veer in the direction of a more libertarian anarcho-capitalist society, minimizing government, doing things of that nature, right? And look, there have been times with both this and the excluding of the summer lunch program where she is cutting down government. And it's a really difficult position to have, right? Because I think people immediately look at this and they say, this is awful, this is terrible. Like, why is she cutting out these things that help people, right? And we've had this discussion many times in the podcast. We don't have to rehash it. My belief and the belief of a lot of people in my camp is that these things don't actually help as citizens. They actually take more money away from the citizens and, pose as a front to like, oh, we're going to quote unquote help people. On a more federal sense, I posted this on Twitter. Apparently, Kamala Harris talked about a new $40 million incentive to help people with buying homes, or like it was like home counseling services or something, like home purchasing counseling services. And I'm like, $40 million to help people buy a house? Are you fucking kidding me? Like these things, they all on face value, they're like, okay, we're helping people, but really they don't help people. It's like, I always use the analogy of it's a bucket of water that you have a hose, you're just constantly putting water into it with a hose, and there's a fucking leak in the bottom of it, and nobody's addressing the leak in the bottom, and people are just still filling the bucket with water. And it's a system that just is like it, that when you have these government entities being like, okay, we have these quote unquote programs to help people, it doesn't really help people. So look, I do think that this is a step in the positive direction. So let's look at this article. It's from the Des Moines Register. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds signs law eliminating dozens of state boards and commissions. She signed this law Friday, furthering her plan to shrink state government. Reynolds, a Republican, called for the changes in her condition of the state address in January. The reductions follow a massive state government reorganization plan Reynolds signed into law last year that reduced cabinet-level state agencies from 37 to 16. Senate File 2385 eliminates 67 boards and commissions, merges a number of others, and reduces the membership of several boards. Look, I think at face value, this is a very positive thing. This is a clear step in minimizing government. I give her credit for that. I think, like I said, you have to look at the positive. You have to look at the positive when this kind of things happen. I will say this, though, as a caveat. It will be curious to see if this actually has an effect. I.e., are taxes going to be decreased? Are Iowans are actually going to be expected to pay less? Are we actually going to get more as a result of this? Or is what I fear is going to happen, which is she's merely just going to allocate that money to things that, further her own personal agenda, namely the police. I feel like the amount of money that goes into the police department in Iowa is just exorbitant, and I doubt she's going to make any cuts on that, right? So I do think that there's something to that argument. If you just end all, it's like if you were to compare like the librarian to the governor, well, that's not really a fair comparison, right? Like, yes, in a sense, like they're all working for the same entity that's like inflicting harm on everyone, right? But are those two positions really comparable? I don't think so. And if tax dollars were just gonna cut out libraries and then all go to police, like now we have no libraries, now we just have warlords in our town, right? Like, I don't really know if is that necessarily worth congratulating? I don't know. But look, at face value, as a first step, I do see that as being a positive. This by no means like makes me a Kim Reynolds fan. I'm not like rooting for Kim Reynolds. I still hope that this is the bad thing about living in Iowa, right? Like, if we got a Democratic governor in Iowa, like, it would just be a disaster. I mean, the government spending would go through the roof, and like that's when like shit would really hit the fan, right? So this is like when you have like really the only thing that's like keeping you from that, which is like a really shitty Republican dictator, right? That like just happens to have a less of a percentage of tax dollars being taken out of people than Dave Smith had a really good analogy for this. It's like the only difference between Republicans and Democrats is one wants to take like a little bit more money from your paycheck than the other one, right? But like not even that much. Anyway, so it's going to be interesting to see what the kind of the cause and effect is of this whole thing. All right, I think that's pretty much it for today. We did kind of another political episode. I know that might not be all y'all's favorite subject, but I thought it was worth talking about. Like I said, I've been really disappointed in the lack of coverage on this this revelation. Maybe I'm behind on the game on this. Maybe this is something that I am just becoming aware of, that like everybody's like, oh, this happened like 3 months ago, whatever. I don't know, man. I try to keep up with the news, and I try to report it, and I try to my prestigious position of reporting the news. No, I did think it was important to talk about this, though. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Every Monday at 2 p.m., you know what's up. And we got the Unhinged and Uncensored podcast every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Guts and Gore, we're kind of taking a little hiatus on that. It's running 3 podcasts is an insane amount of work. for me, and it's been a lot. So I think kind of taking breaks where needed and kind of dialing things back to, what it needs to be is a positive step overall. So anyways, we'll be back with that podcast at some point. I don't think it's dead forever, but we are going to be taking a little hiatus. So you probably won't be hearing much from the Guts and Gore anytime soon, but we're still going to have these two podcasts, the McAllister Hours and the Unhinged Uncensored with Lolo. Those are still going to be running, and we're going to keep doing everything with those. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Peace.